Hi there. In this video, we're going to cover Solana, Near, as well as SUI. And we'll start with the micro view in the daily chart, and then we'll go to the bigger picture and look at the Wyckoff stages. If you are new to my session, I'll cover the Wyckoff stages I mentioned, and then also the potential price trend change, also key price levels. These are education content only, not financial advice. So let's start with the Solana daily chart. So we talked about the uptrend that potentially is going to go up to challenge the orange key level of 101. But the prerequisite is that by the beginning of May, it has to go past the $89 red key level. Reason being, here, when February begins, the 5th and the 6th, you can see in a lot of altcoin charts that there are two very prominent candles that set the range, the trading range of the subsequent 2 months all the way into end of April. All right. In this case, it's an extension from the initial drop back in the beginning of February. So from 101 orange key level all the way down to the purple key level of 75. And you see most of the time, okay, it's basically within this range. And that's where it leads to the point I mentioned just now. So started from April 3rd, the uptrend continues all the way until this point where the price of Solana is getting to a gap or a wedge, this triangle over here. Let me enlarge this just by a little bit so it covers all the candles better. Okay, it's basically this range. After adjusting, we have to push the date by a few days. So that's 6th of May. So when this continues to trade and being suppressed by this resistant key level, $89, like what it did on the 17th, it came back down, found support along this uptrend support line, but by that time, in about less than 2 weeks, okay, these are the only two options. Either it breaks above the $89 and continue to go challenge the 101, or the second option, it gets rejected and breaks the support of this uptrend that started in the beginning of April and comes back to test to $75 again. There are only two options over here. All right, let's adjust the state as well. Because if it is successful, the bulls are successful in pushing the price above the 89 and comes to challenge the 101, they will reach another decision point by the beginning of June, meaning is it going to break above this sideways trend, all right, and continue the extension with the uptrend, or is the sideways trend going to run all the way into the second half of the year? Okay, that's the big decision point over there after the first round in 2 weeks. All right, given the situation around the world, all those chaos, the base case, or at best, it's like sideways, unless when the U.S. new Fed chair comes in, or the U.S. when the Fed announced interest rates decision in a few days that surprises the market, then that would provide a different level of forces to drive the market to either direction. If we look at the candles over here, this day on the 6th February, it went lower than the purple key level. And if we go back to the history of Solana, back in 2022-23 accumulation cycle, it was way lower than the 75 purple key level. Okay, so if anything, really draws out liquidity, this is not the worst case we see. But let's hope that it is not as bad as the case the world is projecting right now with all those chaos, the economic uncertainty, or even stagflation, recession, all that. Hope those won't realize. Okay, if those would realize, that's when we probably will see another downtrend like what it did, back over here. Okay, we don't want to see that happen again. All right. So before going to the Solana Wyckoff stage bigger picture, let's go to NEAR and SUI first. NEAR, similar to Solana, okay, you see this sideways approaching a key level. NEAR is similar, so it is going through an uptrend, currently finding a little bit of resistance around this intermediate level of 1.39 or around 1.4. The key level is around 1.6. Okay, we already talked about this, that by mid-May, if this is still being suppressed by the yellow dashed line, it is going to give us two options, or it has only two options for NEAR. Break above that yellow resistance line that has been suppressing the price since the drop back in end of January. You see most of the time except 2 days, plus last week, another 2 days, 4 days in total since January. The price of NEAR closed above this line, around 4 to 7 days roughly. If you look at all these candles, they are hovering around that line. So for clear close, it's only about 4 days. So if this trend continues towards this, then it has to confirm. Is it going to break below again and comes back to challenge 1.01 like what it did in February? Or is it going to continue with the uptrend, not only coming to challenge 1.6, but to challenge 1.96 like what it did back in mid-January? Okay, so it is getting into an interesting zone, and we're getting closer and closer to these dates if this uptrend continues. All right, from a volume perspective, it looks like it is losing steam. Okay, the volume drops very significantly, so that's why it is not that encouraging for the bulls. Hope they will regain momentum and breaks above this yellow dash line. All right, remember I said, imagine the volume is like your fuel tank and you are driving a rocket. If you want the rocket to go high and far, you want to see your fuel tank with, sustained volume, at least maintaining at a reasonably high level, okay, at least around average, if not higher than average. Of course, if you see your fuel tank, you're even going higher and higher, refueling the fuel tank level, going higher and higher, that's where you get the sustained rally. All right, when the fuel starts to drop, that's where your rocket is going to stop. Now, let's go to SUI. Clear sideways between, the level set by this February 6th candle. You see the big commitment over here, those two huge volume bars, in addition to the huge candlesticks. In a lot of altcoin charts, you see those two big candles, February 5th and February 6th. And those two set the trading range for the subsequent 2 or even over 2 months. Okay, stepping into 3 months now. February, trading between the range of the blue key level of 88 cents all the way to 1.08 direct key level. You see it came up, bounced, came down slightly below the blue, but hasn't broke lower than the February 6th low point. You can consider 0.75 is the worst case scenario if the price dropped down to this point, if you take reference from those 2 dates. But for the case of SUI, 2024 accumulation cycle has gone way lower than the blue key level of 75 cents. You see the dip over here. It went all the way very close to the low of 2023 accumulation, around the orange key level of 0.45. So it is not the worst case. The worst I was mentioning earlier, if you reference to this February 6th, that's where it is from. If you take reference to the earlier accumulations, the light blue key level of 0.75 is definitely not the worst. Okay, so here, base case sideways, we talked about the uptrend. Last week we said, okay, if this is really an uptrend going back to challenge, the 1.08, we'll get confirmation around these dates. And unfortunately, the confirmation came earlier than expected. So, but close enough. So here, on the 22nd, the price closed slightly lower than the support. And the subsequent days, the bulls weren't able to reclaim this level. So that's confirmed. And not sure whether this is starting to develop into a downtrend. I'm keeping this channel box over here, just adjusting that by a little. Shorten it. I'm keeping those dates over there in case it shoots back up, but that's where we have to start drawing a new channel box if this is really coming down, because we see a little bit of U-turn sign over here. You start to recognize this pattern now, right? If you have been following along. White candle, red candle on two sides, similar length. This more like a cross or star, I don't know, whatever you call that. Okay, short candlestick body basically, and long wicks on both sides. This kind of U-turn signal. Okay, if this is the beginning of a new short-term downtrend, where is it going to head to? The tricky part right now is that we have only 2 points to take reference. So depending on where this goes, if this is where it starts to continue to drop, that has to be adjusted. The range, the price range of this channel will be narrower, and the drop will be steeper than the way, that if it goes that particular direction. So in the next few days, we will see, is the price going to shoot up a little, giving us a new reference point before coming back down, or is it going to come down along this line? That's also a confirmation. If that's the case, if it continues to come down, this, where it is pointing to, around 3rd of May, let's drag this over here, is where the decision point comes in, the first decision point. Okay, 0.088, crossing the resistance. Okay, either one of the two options. Break outside of this downtrend, meaning, okay, the sideways bounce continues, or comes lower, maybe coming back to challenge this level once again, that 82 cents level. Okay, somewhere between the two key levels. Or even worse, extend all the way to the 0.75, like we talked about. If we take reference from the earlier accumulations. Okay, so that's still a possibility. That leads us to 16th of May, around mid-May. Not very far, about 3 weeks time. Okay, so you see decision point 1, decision point 2, first timing, second timing. Now, let's get to the big picture. And before we talk about the Wyckoff, remember the dashboards that help you avoid FOMO and panic is now available on Substack. The handle is AssetLens. Go subscribe and check it out while it's free. Here, the big picture, the Wyckoff, we said Solana seemingly going through the transition period from distribution into accumulation. So these blue tags over here versus the orange tags. Why I say it is still a transition, not confirming, the reason is that during the preliminary support stage, it's very common to have these kind of sideways activities. And if you look at what happened over here back in 2022, you see these kind of similar pattern, right? The back candle down with a long wick that's almost equal size or even longer, from below, compared to the candlestick body. Let me enlarge this. So if you're on a mobile device, you see what I'm talking about. See the candlestick body and the wick. The wick is, like equal or longer. That's where I consider big institution kind of started buying. But that doesn't mean that's the lowest point of the accumulation. And you see what happened after the sideways trading period. So back in here, we have this sideways period. And before that, we have this candle that the wick is of equal or longer size compared to the candlestick body. Very similar pattern. And while we don't know whether the final drop would happen, because sometimes, if you imagine news are like a train. Okay, if you have a bunch of good news lining up, in the next couple of weeks, that's going to drive the price up, right? Reverse, on the other hand, if you have a bunch of bad news lining up like a train in the next few weeks, that's going to draw the liquidity out, and that's when we have those kind of big drop. Okay, that may be interest rate rise or whatever that is. I don't remember. We can quickly pull that out and see what actually happened. Okay, interest rate started to climb, and then it went even higher. Okay, that is like going inverse until it stabilizes. Okay, so that may be part of the thing that's contributing to that sudden drop. But for us this turn, in addition to interest rates, there are a lot of other issues, compared to 2022. So definitely the risk is there. So NEO, what does it look like? Compared to SOL, where it's only still in transition from distribution to accumulation, NEO and SUI are well within the accumulation cycle. Okay, look at the levels. NEO has already tested the lowest level compared to the 2023 accumulation. Okay, it just didn't get as low as the 2020, all the way to the 51 cent level. Okay, 1.01 was where the previous test came down to. So what we hope to see is another sign of strength. So there were two, but the volume wasn't good enough to sustain the price at that level. So when the price comes to challenge the 3.16 level again, that's the level set by the automatic rally. When that happens, that's a sign that people are willing to, or institutions, whales are willing to come back to risk-on mode again. Okay? And as we look at SUI, similar situation, just that SUI hasn't got any sign of strength before. Look at NEO. It tested this upper boundary for 3 times already. SUI, not even once. And the upper boundary is around these two blue key levels, 1.82, 1.93. Okay, that's what we want to see with higher than average volume. Okay, like this bar over here. So that's the big picture. It hasn't really got outside of the accumulation yet for quite a number of altcoins, and for some bigger leading projects, they haven't even gone into a deep accumulation. Not saying that they must repeat or get as low as the levels back in 2003, 2004. Just that at this stage, we don't see that automatic rally. We don't see the subsequent tests. So it's still at a point where those kind of shakeout can happen, right? There are cases that these kind of reaccumulation is going to lead to another peak, okay, another test to the high side. If you look at Solana, it's pretty similar to Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, where it has the initial formal, the buying climax, the BC over here, the upthrust, the second formal, and it did not have an upthrust after distribution. In Wyckoff terms, if we look at Bitcoin, I've marked the stage over here. If you ask me, like, why I'm expecting it must go to the downside, what about a positive scenario? If this distribution really isn't over, or hasn't come to an end yet, and reaccumulation happens at this low level, even lower than this initial period before the formal, this is considered the slim possibility of the SEO coming back to re-challenge the previous 200 plus level. Okay, so yeah, there's still chance, but the tendency. Remember the train I talked about? There must be some very good news lining up. Not a bunch of bad news like Middle East conflict, private credit crisis, recession, stagflation, whatever that comes lining up. Okay, so remember, to help you avoid formal panic, go to Substack and subscribe to the newsletter. Thank you for joining me. See you in the next video. Cheers.